The stamp duty regime in South Australia has not been reviewed in over 15 years. Where other states have established stamp duty exemptions and concessions for first home buyers and pensioners who do wish to downsize, South Australia offers nothing comparable. I have previously called on the Treasurer to conduct a review of our outdated stamp duty legislation by way of an earlier motion. I now seek to establish a select committee so that our parliament can investigate the impacts of South Australia's stamp duty regime with a view to modernising it. I believe South Australia is overdue for a genuine inquiry into this issue to hear first-hand from the community about how the stamp duty regime impacts residents, businesses and the primary industries and not-for-profit sectors. Enabling this chamber to hear from those most impacted by this tax will ensure that any review or update of the system will be informed by those who are most knowledgeable. We pay amongst the highest stamp duty rates in the country. In South Australia right now, the purchase of a $500,000 home will attract a $21,330 stamp duty bill. This is almost double that of the Australian Capital Territory, where they also offer a first home buyer's exemption, as well as concessions for pensioners who wish to downsize. Whilst it is true that Victoria and the Northern Territory attract slightly higher stamp duty rates, both jurisdictions offer exemptions or concessions that are non-existent in this state. The ACT and New South Wales have been first movers in reforming stamp duty, with our biggest state recently giving new home owners the option of substituting the significant one-off payment with an annual land tax of 0.3%. The Australian Capital Territory is halfway through its 20-year plan to reform its property tax system, where it is aiming to abolish a number of inefficient and unfair taxes. A particular policy proposal that piqued my interest in this issue came from the South Australian Dairy Farmers Association. In their Election Policies 2022 document, they proposed for a stamp duty rebate on the purchase of non-productive land that is returned to commercial production within a year of the transaction. This, they argue, would allow for any immediate revenue lost to government to be regained by way of increased productivity and jobs in South Australia. In my dealings with the business sector, community organisations, primary industries and residents more generally, the high cost of stamp duties has been frequently raised as an inhibitor to growth, investment and move freely around South Australia. Stamp duties have been described as archaic, inefficient and a tax on productivity and competitiveness by many economists and policymakers. With all the modern technologies of the 21st century, it's hard to disagree that paying over $25,000 for what is currently a median price house in South Australia just to officially stamp a document appears excessive. This is particularly so when we live in the very state that invented the Torrens title system almost 170 years ago, a comprehensive property register that ensures governments know who owns what piece of land at any point in time. Stamp duties these days have grown to become significant sources of income for state governments who have become reliant on it. With no review of the system occurring for over 15 years, bracket creep has meant that families purchasing a modest home in the suburbs pay the same rate as those who buy multi-million-dollar properties, and it's hard to see how the community could view this as fair and just. It is overdue for state and federal policymakers to revisit the debate about replacing stamp duties with more efficient and less punishing taxation measures. South Australia needs to be a competitive place to attract working families, businesses and primary industries, and it is in that vein that I wish to establish a select committee to inquire about the impact of our current stamp duty regime, and I commend the motion to the chamber.